Hello students, today we are going to discuss discipline management. So first and foremost, we need to understand what is discipline. So according to Dale S. Beach, discipline regulates by reward or penalty the human behavior. What does that mean? Uh, so discipline management is basically intended to promote a minimum acceptable behavior by the employees. With organizational discipline, the employees learn to behave in a controlled and responsible way and start abiding by the guidelines laid down by the organization. There are two types of discipline. One is the positive type of discipline, and the other is the negative type of discipline. Now, what is the positive type of discipline? The positive type of discipline is what we call as the self discipline. It can also be called constructive discipline. It is a type of discipline that does not have any negative connotations or any punishments. The main goal of positive discipline is to encourage self-discipline in the employees. Now, what is self-discipline? Self-discipline is something that involves identifying your aims and striving towards them to achieve them. In this type of discipline, the employees are not afraid of any punishment but will still obey the rules and regulations of the organization because they are disciplined from the inwards, from inside. So that is called a positive discipline. What is a negative discipline? Negative discipline is something what we call as corrective discipline or punitive discipline. It obviously has a negative connotation because unlike the positive discipline, here the employee does not have that motivation from inside to do the work. So what they do is they know that they have to do the work because or else they will be punished or a punitive action will be taken against them. So in order to avoid that punishment, they do that particular task. So that is called a negative discipline. So like I said in the previous slide, positive discipline is also called self-discipline or self-imposed discipline. It involves the creation of an atmosphere in the organization through rewards, recognition, appreciation, incentive, promotion, something that is constructive, to motivate the employees to work willingly to accomplish their own goals and the organization goals. The negative discipline again is what I had already discussed, is like a enforced discipline or a corrective discipline. Why is it enforced? Because the as I had mentioned earlier, the employees are doing that task in fear of getting punished. So that is why it's enforced. So in case of negative discipline, the examples could be, if you're late to office, then you will be punished. Or if you're not following the code of conduct of your workplace, you will be punished in such and such way. So then that person, because of the fear of punishment, will not be late or will follow the code of conduct. When studying discipline, we also should understand what a misconduct is. So, a misconduct is basically the action or the inaction of an employee defined by the employer as unacceptable or prohibited or wrong. So, for example, a minor misconduct could be coming late to work. That could be a minor misconduct. What is a gross misconduct, which is a really, really intolerable offense? That could be getting a gun at your workplace and trying to shoot somebody, um, or probably in financial institutions it could be fraud, like a major fraud that a person could do uh, involving the company as well as the client. Now there are three types of misconducts. One is the minor offense, like I said, coming late to office, or smoking where it is an anti-smoking workplace. There could be a major offense, like there is something that the employer has which you want, and you just take it from them. For example, you take their laptop, you steal their laptop. That could be a major offense. What is an intolerable offense? Intolerable offense, or a gross misconduct, like I've already mentioned, is probably the use of weapons at workplace, or committing a huge fraud which involves the company as well as the client. So what causes misconduct? There are many things that can cause misconduct. So misconduct is basically the outcome of inherent tension when humans are working together in an organization, towards a certain business goal. Working together is not always very peaceful, and it can have a lot of human errors in the behavior of the individuals and how the managers manage the employees. So there are various reasons. So the first reason is stiff and conventional practices of the organization. If the organization policy, they're not very flexible, or they're very stiff, and they do not have allowances for employee redressal, or grievances, then that becomes a problem. The other could be, which is very common, is unfair treatment. Now you are working in a team, and you have put in 20 hours of work, and so has your colleague. He's also put in the same hours of work. Now you believe you and him have worked in the right manner, in the right style, in the right way, and the same hours. Then if the manager gives him a promotion and doesn't give you the promotion which you feel you deserve, then you feel it's unfair treatment, right? Then if you keep on getting that kind of a treatment which you feel is unfair, then you may be liable to cause some misconduct. So that is called unfair treatment. Next is absence of a proper code of conduct. If the employer that you're working with does not have a defined set of code of conduct, then it becomes difficult for you to follow what's in their mind. So you might have a different perception of a code of conduct, and the company might have a different perception of code of conduct. So a lot of times what happens, the employer has an idea in mind and you're not following that. So that becomes misconduct in the employer's eyes. So it's very, very essential that a proper code of conduct be written and circulated amongst the employees. The next could be the improper system of grievance redressal. What is a grievance redressal system? Grievance redressal system is nothing but a foolproof written redressal system for any grievance. Now, a grievance is a hurt, or something that you've been hurt by, whether it is by the employer, or whether it is by the employee, or whether it is by the environment in which you are working in. So if it is not redressed in a proper and timely fashion, that becomes a cause of misconduct. Next is the ineffective HR policies and procedures. Now, the HR policies which are written for the employees are sometimes not very employee friendly. So if these policies are not written with the employees in mind, then that becomes a problem and a cause of misconduct. The next cause of misconduct could be the negative attitude of the employees. See, even if it is in a family, not even an organization, even if it is in a family and there are 5 members in the family, and if one member is always very morose and demoralized and very negative in his comments and action, what happens? The family is not a very happy family because of that one particular employee. The same thing happens in an organization. So in an organization, if an employee is very negative or has a very pessimistic perception, and he goes to the employee union, and the employee union has a similar kind of an attitude, then the company will cease to become a productive company, because if all the employees are perceive the company in a negative way, then that is a huge problem for the company, and so motivation is not there, and it wouldn't be a very productive company. Next could be the organizational culture. Organizational culture is obviously very, very, very important. You have to have a positive, constructive organizational culture where the employees can thrive. If the organizational culture is a pessimistic one, if the culture itself is not something which motivates you, then that becomes a problem and may cause misconduct. Next is the lack of proper communication system. Now, this is a problem in a lot of bureaucratic organizations where they follow a hierarchy, and communication from the top does not reach the bottom or the middle, so to say. Now, if you are not communicated effectively or clearly, then the employee does not even it doesn't even know what their goals are. So you're not aware of your goal as an employee. You don't know how to work in an organization. You don't know what the expectations are from you, from the employers. Then you tend to behave in a way which you feel is right. Now that may not be right as when it comes to the employers. So when there's a lack of proper communication system, things don't go the way that the employers want it to go, and it is no fault of the employer or the employee, so to say, because what they lack is basically a proper communication system. So it is very essential for a company to be constructive and productive to have a proper communication system instilled in the company itself. Now let's understand what are the different disciplinary action or the steps of the disciplinary action that can be taken by the company in case there is a misconduct. Now, what is a disciplinary action or a disciplinary procedure? A disciplinary procedure is basically a formal way for employers to deal with unacceptable behavior by an employee. So we've given two definitions here. You can follow both the definitions, and please memorize the names of the authors as well. So there is a Michael J. Jusius, and the other one is Solomon. According to Solomon, disciplinary action is taken by the management against an individual or group who have failed to conform to the rules established by the management within the organization. So these are the different steps in a disciplinary procedure in a company. So first there is a preliminary investigation. Once the misconduct has happened and the employer has become aware of the misconduct and they want to take it into the disciplinary action phase, then the employer, what they will do is they will first do a preliminary investigation where they will find out what exactly happened, who's at fault, what who did the action which is not supposed to be done first. Was it the employer side or the employee side, or in between employee and employee? What exactly happened? Are there any witnesses? Would they be willing to testify? Does it involve a client or does it involve any other stakeholder? So they will be questioned, and the whole issue and the whole issue will be investigated properly. So once the preliminary investigation is done, a charge sheet is issued where obviously it is a paper which mentions the exact charge that the employee has been charged with. Next, there is a consideration of the explanation. So the employee will either accept the charges, or he will refuse the charges, or he will ask for an extension of time or fail to submit an explanation. These are the different options that are available. The next steps would be the notice of inquiry. Then the action taken would be either suspension with or without pay. There could be a domestic inquiry. Then the next, if there is a domestic inquiry, then the recording of findings by the inquiry officer, awarding of punishment, and communication of punishment. So these are all the steps taken in a disciplinary action. One very effective way to approach the disciplinary process is to follow what is popularly known as the red hot stove rule. Um, According to this theory, and the theory was written by Douglas MacGregor, according to this rule, corrective action should be immediate, it should be impartial, and it should be consistent with a warning, like the results of touching a red hot stove. For example, a child, if he touches a particular pan which is in on the stove and on the fire, he knows that the pan is hot and you're not supposed to touch it. If you touch it, something bad will happen. In spite of knowing that, if he still touches the pan, what happens? So, the burning is immediate. The burn received when a person, that child touches a red hot stove, will be immediate, and the person knows that something has gone wrong. So there is no cause and effect ambiguity. There is clarity here that, okay, because I've touched the stove which I was not supposed to touch because it was in that condition, it was heated up, then that is why I got burned. Okay. Similarly, an employee should be made to realize immediately if he or she is going against the norms or the rules. So one of the approaches should be that the discipline should be immediate. Second is, the discipline should be impersonal. So how is it impersonal? Basically, regardless of the person who touches that hot stove, regardless of anybody, he could be the CEO of the company, he could be the errand boy of the company, regardless of the person who touches the hot stove, that burn will be the same burn. It won't differ from person to person. If that person has touched the red stove, which is, you've done a misconduct, then you will be burned. So it is impersonal. Next is, it is a consistent discipline. Regardless of who touches it, regardless of what time it is getting touched, that red stove, hot stove rule, regardless of when you're touching it, regardless of who is touching it, the punishment is always consistent. Right? Next is, it is foreseeable. Why is it foreseeable? Because as human beings, we already know that a hot stove is very hot. If you touch it, you will burn, and the longer you touch it, as in the longer, the more, the worse misconduct you do, the punishment will be more. So if you touch it once, you will be burnt. If you touch it for 15 minutes, you might get a first degree burn. If you touch it for 30 minutes, you might get a second degree burn. If you go on touching it and keep on touching that hot stove for an hour, you might get a third degree burn. So similarly, in an organization, if the employee is doing a minor misconduct, the discipline will be less. Then if the employee is doing a major misconduct, the discipline obviously will be more harsh. If the employee is committing an intolerable offense or a misconduct, then the discipline would be even more harsh. So it is something that is foreseeable. The employee knows that touching the hot stove or being indisciplined will get him punished. So it is foreseeable, it is consistent, it is impersonal, and it is immediate. So that is the kind of approach we should take to discipline management according to Douglas MacGregor. Now, what is called a domestic inquiry? So domestic inquiry is initiated against a person who obviously does something wrong while they're at their workplace. It forms a crucial aspect of the labor laws, the Indian labor laws, as it provides for a mechanism that deals to resolve disputes that arise in the workplace. this inquiry is an internal inquiry which is conducted usually by the employer to address the issues that arise in the course of employment. The failure to hold a domestic inquiry in cases of misconduct or indiscipline is considered to be a blatant violation of natural justice and the Constitution. Now let's come to grievance management, or the procedure of grievance management, and what are the different types. So grievances are symptoms of conflicts in the enterprise. Grievance management is the procedure through which the manager deals with the grievances of his employees during his service in the organization. So understanding of grievances is important if you want to handle them correctly. If a manager is smart, especially the HR manager, then that person would anticipate and then prevent it from arising again. That is the grievance. So what are the different forms of grievances? There are three forms of grievances. One is factual, the second is imaginary, and the third is disguised. Now, what is factual grievance? Just like the name suggests, these grievances are real, and there are facts and incidents that support it. So, these are tangible grievances which can be proved very easily. Second is imaginary. Now, the grievances could be real or could be imaginary. So they may also be called genuine or imaginary. So when a grievance is due to a valid reason and related to the terms of employment, then it is a real factual grievance. But if the grievance is all in the person's mind, when it doesn't have a valid reason, the management is not at fault. It is called imaginary grievance. Now, what is disguised grievance? Disguised grievances are when sometimes the grievances take place, but the employee they do not know the reasons of grievances. The causes of grievances are unknown. These are called disguised grievances. This type of grievances take place due to mental pressure or frustration due to other factors and not related to work. Now let's come to the model of grievance handling. Now this model, the model grievance procedure, was formulated in pursuance to the Code of Discipline adopted by the 16th session of the Indian Labour Conference in 1958. Yeah, way back in 1958. Sorry. Most of the grievance procedures nowadays are built around this particular model grievance procedure, with certain changes to suit the size and special requirements of an enterprise. So in this model, like you can see, there are 5 successive time-bound steps. Yeah. Firstly, there is number 1, the aggrieved employee shall first present his grievance verbally in person to the officer designated by the management for this purpose. An answer shall have to be given to him within 48 hours of the presentation of the complaint. So as you can see in the first step, it has been mentioned that the turnaround time is only 48 hours. Second one is, the second step of the grievance handling model, if the worker is not satisfied with the decision of this officer or fails to receive an answer within the stipulated period of 48 hours, he shall in person or by his departmental representative, if required, present his grievance to the head of the department designated by the management for this purpose. And what is the TAT here? What is the turnaround time by which that person will have to come back? It is 3 days. So he will get the answer within 3 days of the presentation of the grievance. The next step is if the decision of the departmental head is unsatisfactory, say The aggrieved worker, I mean, if it is satisfied, then the grievance stops then, it is clarified. But if it is not, if it is unsatisfactory, then the aggrieved worker may request the forwarding of his grievance to the grievance committee, which shall make its recommendation to the management within 7 days of the worker's request. The final decision of the management shall be communicated to the worker within the stipulated time of 3 days by the personnel officer, who can also be the HR officer or the HRD officer. Next is, a revision of his grievance can be done if the decision is not satisfactory. The management shall communicate its decision within a week. The last and final step could be, if no agreement is possible, the union and the management may refer the grievance to the voluntary arbitration within a week from the date of receipt by the worker of the management's decision. Okay, so these are the different 5 steps. Now, certain points should be noted in this particular model. For example, calculating the various time intervals under the above the clauses, holidays shall not be included. So only working days are included. So if it is 48 hours, 2 working days, right? If it is 3 days, then 3 working days, so on and so forth. The management should also provide the necessary clerical and other assistance for the smooth functioning of the grievance machinery. Also, during the working time, the concerned person may go for inquiry with the labor or the personnel officer, provided that he has taken permission from his supervisor. Hence, he may not suffer any loss of payment, or the employer will not suffer any loss of output. So there are a lot of methods of grievance resolution that an employer or an employee can resort to. So the first one is collective bargaining. It is the process in which working people through their unions negotiate contracts with their employees to determine their terms of employment, including pay, benefits, hours of job, leaves, job health and safety policies, way to how to balance work and family, and more. So that is collective bargaining. Second is mediation or conciliation. Conciliation is the procedure in which there is an involvement of a third party who provides assistance to the parties in dispute to carry out negotiation between them. The next is arbitration. Arbitration basically means it is a procedure which involves a third party in the form of a single arbitrator or a board of arbitrators who are assigned with the duty to resolve the dispute between the parties. Now, if conciliation fails to settle the dispute between the parties in the industry, adjudication takes charge in carrying out the job which the conciliation mechanism was assigned to do. Now, this comes only when the conciliation method fails. Then comes the adjudication method. Now, adjudication method directly came out of the Industrial Dispute Act of 1947. The terms adjudication and arbitration have very minute differences if placed in our country. So, very, very, very minute differences, and it's difficult to tell whether it is adjudication or arbitration. Thank you. That was the end of this presentation. I've already provided notes to you on this subject, which expands on each and every point. And we've also had a question answer session in class wherein all your doubts have been cleared. Please come forth with any more doubts if you have any more, and we will solve it together. We will also do case studies on this particular chapter going forward, probably next week. Thank you.